Thank you, everybody, for coming to this wonderful meeting. There will be a meeting of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission on Tuesday, April 21st, 2026 at 1 p.m. at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, Concord, New Hampshire. Please be advised this meeting is being captured on video. If we could please all rise, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The bear looks very official.
He is part of the staff.
That bear standing in the corner.
The public is entitled to attend all commission meetings, and when recognized by the chairman, the public may speak on any item on the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to limit public comments to the extent necessary for the orderly conduct of the meeting. Action items. The approval of the March 17th, 2026 commission meetings. If I could get a motion. We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor of approving the April commission meetings, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Motion passes. Consent agenda. The following items have been grouped together and noticed as consent agenda items to expedite action on routine matters which may not require public discussion. Commission members may remove certain items if further public input or discussion is deemed necessary. Approval to accept the following donations totaling $10.50 to the Small Gifts and Donations account. Rough Time Fisheries, LLC of Fremont, New Hampshire for $5. Michael Sprigg, Salisbury, Mass. for $3. Michael Hasty, Rochester, New Hampshire for $2.50. 2B, approval to accept the donations of $50 from John and Teresa Cross of Meredith, New Hampshire, in memory of Ross Cross, Nokomis, Florida, former of Concord, New Hampshire, for deposit into the Small Gifts and Donations account. Do I have a motion to accept items 2A through 2B?
Make a motion for items 2A and 2B.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Action item 3, approval to accept the donation of $2,000 from the Great Rotary Fishing Derby, Meredith, New Hampshire, for use by the Inland Fisheries Division for a large lakes program.
Make a motion to accept item 3.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item 3 passes. 4, approval to accept the donation of $2,000 from Tim Duvall for use towards purchasing a law enforcement canine for deposit into the canine account.
Make a motion to approve item 4.
Any seconds? A second. You have many people want a second? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item 4 passes. Number 5, approval to accept the donation of a circa 1890s antique linen sign with Fish and Game license prices. That's pretty cool.
I make a motion for item 5, and I was wondering if we could actually see it.
I'm wondering the same thing. Do we have it in possession already? Do we know?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 5 has passed. Item number 6, approval to accept the donation of a 47 horsepower four-wheel drive Toyota tractor with cab, front end loader, brush hog, and accessories valued at over $50,000 from Bob Latero, Jefferson, New Hampshire, for use in maintaining wildlife openings, fields, and access roads on wildlife management areas in the Region 1 area. That was a mouthful.
We're going to make a motion to accept item 6.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yep.
Is it correct that it can only be used in wildlife management area in the region, in Region 1?
Yes, Jim will speak to that.
Can't use it anyplace else on any of our other properties?
Jim Ayler, Wildlife Habitat Program Supervisor.
No, Bob would be fine if we used it elsewhere as well, but primarily going to be housed at the Lancaster office.
So it's available.
Yeah. Our wonderful 1890s, that is really cool.
That's cool. I think it should hang up on this wall.
Any other discussion?
I have a question for Jim. Are we going to need to purchase any other equipment, trailer, anything like that, so that we can accommodate the use of this, or do we have everything we need to?
Yeah, if the land purchase with Bob goes through, he's actually going to kick in a trailer. But in the meantime, if it doesn't go through for whatever reason, can't agree on price, what have you, we can rent a tractor and a 1-ton. We also have friends in the Trails Bureau who'd be willing to move it for us. We'll figure out a way to get it moved.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor of item number 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item 6 passes. Number 7, approval of the fiscal year 27 budgets for the Wildlife Division dedicated accounts. Dan Bergeron.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Members of the commission, Dan Bergeron, Chief of...
I'll make a motion to accept
Dan Bergeron, Chief of the Wildlife Division. So last month, we came before you with our operating budgets for both our wildlife habitat account and our game management account. So those are the two dedicated accounts in the wildlife program that the commission has oversight of. You may remember I'd gone down through these different class lines with you all. These should be in your packets. These are updated slides that Commissioner Hodgson had asked for, FY26 figures and then FY26 year to date. So essentially what we've spent out of that budget. This was put together for the end of March, so there will have been some changes since then. We get those updated on a really daily basis. So. We brought the FY26 budget before you last year, similar to this. You might recall that you'd voted to approve that for us. I can answer any questions you may have, since I'd gone down through all these class lines in last month's meeting. So we're happy to answer any questions, but if there are none, we would ask for approval to move forward with these operating budgets. And lastly, I'll just note a reminder that anything that would be outside of these, so land purchases, things like that, that are above and beyond what we have in kind of our operating budget here, we would come back before you for your approval for those purchases. So, for example, if we found we needed to buy a new piece of equipment that wasn't budgeted for already, we'd come back for that approval. If we were going to do a land purchase, we would come back before you for approval for those individual items as well.
On this class 304, what was in fiscal year 26, just not in fiscal year 27?
For game or for habitat?
This would be wildlife habitat,
And wildlife habitat?
the 304 account. You see there's a large reduction,
Yep, okay.
and I'm wondering what was in fiscal year 26 that made it that much higher?
Yeah, Jim, actually, do you?
Looks like we didn't spend it all either. Right?
Yeah, do you know if you'd budgeted for an additional project or? So that's mainly, so the 304 class line is maintenance and management, so road repairs, parking, mowing. I don't know if it was associated with the damage that we had up there during the flooding events. So that was likely why it was higher in 2026. We were doing a lot of repair work up there from some heavy rain events. So that's likely why. Jim can go back. We could potentially do a follow-up if he finds something different, but my assumption would be because of all the repairs that were happening in the northern part of the state due to some severe weather events.
So the $7,300 is what's remaining. That's the unencumbered balance.
That's what's spent year to date.
So we spent most of it. Our surveyor had some personal issues as far as being able to expend the remaining of the 70, towards the latter half of the fiscal year. Our surveyor had some personal issues he had to deal with, so he was out a lot.
Any other commissioners? Not seeing any more questions. The motion on the table is to approve the fiscal year 27 budget for the Wildlife Division's dedicated accounts. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
I want to press my luck. What was that for wildlife and game?
I'm sorry, the original motion was for both accounts, I believe, yes. Thank you for the clarity, yes. Ray was more clear than I was, so.
Because you were pushing your luck down.
So now we're on to fisheries, right?
Thank you very much.
All right, action item number 8. Approval of the fiscal year 27 budget for fisheries habitat account. Jared.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Jared Lamey, Fish Habitat Biologist, Inland Fisheries Division. So pretty similar to what we just went through with Dan. Again, I presented most of this information at last month's meeting, just looking for approval this month. And as was requested, we included the expenditures year to date for each of those things. So I'm not going to go through each line, but the highlighted rows, I just wanted to draw your attention to. Those are the major increases from last fiscal year. And as we talked about last month, that is related to the increase in the DES dam registration fees. And the grants non-federal, those are the specific projects that you all approved. So that was the 4 fish passage projects that were approved at the June meeting, as well as the land conservation that we're going to follow up on with another presentation. But that's pretty much all I have for you today. Any questions?
Do you have a motion for
We
this?
don't, actually.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve after discussion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, go ahead, Commissioner
Can you
Green.
explain to me the $16,000 of intra-agency transfers?
Intra-agency transfers, I believe that is the 10% administrative fee that is placed on this account.
Just I'm trying to understand intra-agency transfer. The transfer of money to another agency.
Certainly. Most all of our dedicated accounts are assessed an internal administrative charge of 10% of revenue transactions, excluding federal. And that 10% is assessed on the dedicated accounts if the RSA permits it. If the RSA does not, then we do not assess that 10% fee. So that $16,000 is budgeted to move from the fisheries habitat account into the unrestricted fish and game fund at the close of the fiscal year. Both the wildlife habitat and the game management account also had that class line of class 29 for that 10% transfer. It's to pay for all of the overheads such as the office of the director, the business office, people in public affairs, people over in facilities that are funded mainly by the Fish and Game Fund but support the entire mission of the department and all of the other divisions.
Is there any other questions?
I have,
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
forgive me, Kathy, but with respect to that 10%, that number has been fixed for a long period of time?
No, actually, when I started, it was transaction-based. It was based on per transactions within that dedicated accounting unit. That is actually how DAS charges back to state agencies. It's called the SWICAP, the statewide cost allocation, to pay administrative services. Glenn Norman, though, he decided that it would be easier and more open, more transparent if it was revenue-based. Apparently, that's how they do it in the private sector. So that changed under his leadership.
Follow up, not to belabor this, but what would prevent that from being revisited at some point and all of a sudden it becomes 15%?
Absolutely nothing. That is a leadership call.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Smith?
Probably a couple of questions. First of all,
For me or for Jared?
whoever,
Whoever wants to take the floor.
doesn't the law say what money can be used for out of those accounts? And
Yes, it does.
This 10% isn't in the law, correct?
The law does state what those accounts can be used for, and every RSA is reviewed internally, and if it is allowed to cover management and administrative costs, not internal administrative costs, but administration of that program, then we charge the administrative fee. A search and rescue cannot be charged because it is not explicit within the RSA that we can charge search and rescue for that internal administrative charge. There are other accounts. The pheasant account has never been charged the internal administrative fee because that language is specific to the purchase or propagation of pheasants, although I believe that has recently changed. So every dedicated account is looked at for the language within that account.
Following.
Yep.
How come in the game management account and the wildlife habitat account, there is no, what do you call it, intra-agency payment?
There is. It's class 29.
There is? I got
Yes.
zeros on my sheet.
That means, I'm assuming,
They zeroed it out. There's a $15,000 earmark for fiscal year 27.
The zero out you're seeing in the FY 2016 they spent it on.
What's that?
Means they spent it on zero.
On fiscal year 26.
Yeah,
Spent it.
that's why you're seeing a zero right there.
we have not, that charge is assessed at the end of the fiscal year, during the fiscal year close, so that would be actually after July 1st to be on the books for the prior fiscal year. There's only one transaction within that class line annually.
Okay, I'll leave it alone.
Bruce?
Yeah, just to make it clear in my mind, it sounds to me like the accounts where you can assess an intra-agency fee, you do, to
Yes.
support the general management and oversight of Fish and Game as a whole.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. One of them happens to be 10%. I'm not sure.
They're all 10%.
They're all
and that-
10%.
Yep, it's a flat rate, and I actually have an internal procedure for that, and that 10% is based on revenues, but only revenues directly related to that dedicated account.
So each little area pays its pro rata share of what it costs to operate the place
Yes.
administratively.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any questions, the motion on the table is to approve the fiscal year 27 budget for the fisheries habitat account. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
I oppose.
motion passes. You got that, Tanya?
Eric's opposed?
Yep.
Thank you.
Number 9, thank you. Approval to expend $75,000 from the fisheries habitat account to support a project to permanently conserve 40.6 acres along the West Branch River to protect high-value wild brook trout habitat while advancing targeted riparian and in-stream restoration that strengthens cold water resilience in the Warner River watershed.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, this is a follow-up from last month's presentation about this potential project, which we are requesting $75,000 to help support a land conservation project in the town of Bradford, New Hampshire, and Merrimack County along the West Branch Warner River. Just a quick summary of what we discussed last month. The property is approximately 40.6 acres, and it contains about 2,000 feet of the West Branch Warner River and the riparian area along both sides of the property. We're asking for $75,000 primarily because a request to the Aquatic Resource Mitigation Fund at DES was originally made for $275,000. We were awarded $200,000, so we're just making up that lapse for that particular grant source. But at the same time, we also have Osbon Sargent, who would be the eventual landowner of the property, soliciting other grant sources to complete this project.
Commissioners, questions?
I've got a question.
Commissioner Titone.
On the town of Bradford amount that's pending, what happens if that's not received?
With me today, I have Andy Deegan from Osbon Sargent, who will be the eventual landowner. And maybe this table was made prior to last month's meeting, so maybe Andy has some news on that.
Hello. Bradford has not voted on that. I've talked with the chair of the Conservation Commission. They have about $80,000 that they can use to support projects, and this is a very important project in their town. If they don't support it, that would be highly unusual. But if they do not give us money for that, we do have dedicated funds that we can tap into for that 40, but it comes with extra restrictions for us. The town of Bradford has approved holding a conservation easement on this property, so we will own the underlying fee, and the town agreed to permanently protect it even further with a conservation easement.
Do we know when that vote will come up in town?
It's not a town meeting vote, it's just a Conservation Commission, it's their dedicated fund, they can put it towards projects. So it's really just a Conservation Commission meeting, and they're either going to do it this month or next.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Green.
Mike, did you say the town of Bradford has not committed yet to this?
I have heard from their chair of their Conservation Commission that they're very supportive of this. They've agreed to take on a conservation easement, and I'd be shocked if they didn't give those funds.
But
they haven't. They have not yet, no.
So they actually haven't come out and said, we're going to donate $40,000 to this.
Not at this time, no.
Any other commissioner questions?
So to be clear, is it the Conservation Commission who will make the determination, or the town? I understood it to be the Conservation
It's the
Commission.
Conservation Commission who will be making the determination, not the town.
Whether or not they make the 40,000?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not I heard you say, right, it's not a select board vote, it's not a town meeting vote?
Nope, it's a Conservation Commission vote.
Commissioner Train.
Could you tell us who you are, please, just remind me?
Sure. My name's Andy Deegan. I work for Osmond Sargent. I've been there since 2008. I undergraduate wildlife biology, got a law degree. This is much more fun. We're an accredited land trust, so it means we've gone above and beyond for the Land Trust Alliance. So yeah, we also have what's called terra firma insurance. So if there's a problem on a property, we do have an insurance policy that we can tap into to fix issues, but we also do have a dedicated stewardship and enforcement fund that's quite substantial. So we're in for the long haul.
Thank you.
Commissioner Green.
I'm getting hung up on the $40,000 that they haven't committed to. If, I know you say it'd be unusual if they didn't. A lot of unusual things that happen. If they do not, where's that $40,000 going to come from?
So part of that budget, so the total purchase price is $450. Part of that budget is the restoration work that we're planning on doing on the property, adding woody. I mean, Ben can talk more to that. That can come out of our dedicated stewardship funds for our fee management properties. So if they don't, which again, highly unlikely, we have other pots of money that we can use for the stewardship of this piece.
But in other words, if they don't, you've got to take money from somewhere else.
Correct.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, can I know the motion is to accept. Can I amend the motion to table?
So, I got a question, if you don't mind, on civics clarity here for the director. If for some reason they can't come up with that $40,000 and we designated $75,000, our money will not come into the project, is this correct? So point being, if they can't come up with 40, our 75 isn't going anywhere. And that's how civics, all of our projects, when we vote, if somebody else falls through, we're no longer on the hook for that money. They can't just take that money. I understand your concern. I'm just clarifying.
What I'm concerned is if we vote in favor and the town doesn't come up with the $40,000, and you're saying it's going to come from somewhere else, that means somebody else.
Their land trust fund that they control.
We have
they have a Habitat Land Trust fund in his nonprofit. That's what they're saying. For Habitat Land.
I'm just uncomfortable with not knowing they're going to give the $40,000.
This is not uncommon for a lot of these projects. All of these organizations are trying to generate the funds, get the money, get the approval. It's not uncommon to have things pending, even at the point where we commit our monies. To Chairman's point, if the project doesn't secure the funding as needed, as described, then we would not be committing our funds to it. There are opportunities where even, as the gentleman stated, he said that their fund could make up the difference. And so when that happens, we would still be committed to this project. There are even opportunities where, I don't know that it's happened here, but I know in other agencies I worked for where we've had funding that was not secured, and we restructured the project so that we could at least do secure the property and do some of the restoration work, perhaps not all of it, and then came back for another ask to all these other partners to make up the difference for the other remaining parts. But in this case, even if the commission decides to commit the funds, we are committed to this project. If they can't secure the full funding in either through the existing Town of Bradford Conservation Commission or through the stewardship fund, then our commitment is not going to move forward. We need this to move forward as a whole. So our money's still secure. This is not uncommon, though, to have this happen.
So you're insuring me if the town of Bradford does not come through with $40,000. One, I get very uncomfortable when I hear a conservation commission is doing this without the town voting on it. There's too many, to me, things that could go wrong. But you're saying if they don't give the $40,000, we're not held responsible to give them $75,000, correct?
Well, that's a civics process for the state, the way we appropriate our money.
So just we also have been collecting private funds from individuals. Those don't go into our operating. Those go into a dedicated fund specifically for this project. None of the funds that are given to this project are used for anything else but this project. If we are not successful with raising all the funds for this project, we go to those individual donors and we ask them, do you want your money back? Because we didn't meet our goal. And if they want their money back, we give it back to them. And we have a full accounting of who gave what and what it's for.
And just one more follow-up.
Go ahead.
Once this is all done, do we own it?
No.
Do we own it once this is done?
No, Osmond Sargent would own it. We're a land trust. So we would own the underlying fee with an easement with the town of Bradford.
Which gives us what?
You'd
What
have,
are you giving us to give to the public?
you're protecting 2,000 feet of frontage on both sides of the west branch of the Warner River. There's good trout in the river, is my understanding. When we were out there last Thursday, there was, 100 white sucker. So that our properties are open to the public for low-impact recreation, including hunting, fishing, and in certain instances, trapping. We do want to be careful with that because a lot of people use dogs on the property, have their dogs go on the property. So this is securing access for the general public to fish in this river, to hunt on this property forever. And that will be solidified in the conservation easement with the town of Bradford, that we will not be able to post the property against public access for walking, nature observation, hunting, fishing. So.
Let me let Commissioner Cavan go ahead.
I'll leave you alone about the money for the moment.
Okay.
But what's important to me, what's the boilerplate on the easement? When does the easement get negotiated and what are the details of the easement? And has Fish and Game already had any discussion about the details of the easement?
No, not to my understanding. The easements that we work with allow for two commercial activities, agriculture and forestry. Forestry isn't really, this isn't really a forestry property. It is managed for hay, and we are going to increase the buffer to the river. No structures would be allowed on the property. And certain structures, like there's a bench on the property so people can sit and look at the river. It's kind of nice. Everything that we do on the property would have to be done with a management plan. We need to be getting advice through experts, so people who understand agriculture, cooperative extension. For any of the restoration work involving the river, we would be working with Fish and Game engineers to make sure we're doing it the right way. So yeah, we can't subdivide the property. We can't use it for residential purposes, no septic systems. None of that can go on this property.
So, there must be somewhere in existence and in a file, an example of previous easements that have been engaged in, that if a person wanted to read that easement to see what we're really getting for that, we can talk about all the monies, but at the end, what is the detail? And I would be interested in reading that.
Sure.
So is it possible to have access to that?
Yeah, I could send you basically our template easement. Obviously, you change it for each property, but it's going to be pretty much that document. I can send it to Ben and he can forward it to the commission.
If you would.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other
Yeah.
commissioner comments?
Is there a motion on the floor?
There is right now to approve.
Okay. Then, just to clarify some of this, how about we amend the motion indicating that we're in support of the $75,000 pending the other funds
Yep.
you're talking about? and to include a legal review by Fish and Game of the easement and paper part of it.
Okay, so to clarify, your amendment would be to make this approval based on the fact that the easement is in line with our interests.
Yes.
Am I correct? Yes. Okay. Do I have a second for this amendment?
I'll second. Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
You have to pull the first motion away before you can amend it.
Oh, I thought we can amend the motion, isn't
No.
that the, okay.
No.
Okay, so proceed with it.
The first motion has to be
Yeah, I mean, if the,
rejected. Get the word, but
Right.
basically call.
So I guess,
And then amend
Ray,
it.
you originally made the motion. Do you want to pull it or do you want us to vote on it?
I only asked, can I?
I make the motion.
You made the motion?
Chris said.
Okay. So do you want to pull your motion?
Yes.
Okay, the motion is off the floor. Now, I thought you could.
I'm not sure, I don't quite understand that portion of Robert's rules. I thought when there's a motion on the floor and it's been seconded, it can be amended.
I did too.
And it can be seconded.
Yeah,
We
that's
vote on the
correct.
amendment, and if the
But I
amendment
believe
is
this
correct.
also works too. I agree with you, but also doing it this way works. Now you just make a motion, Bruce, to approve it with the stipulation you just said. So if you'd like to make
So
that-
I'd like to make a motion that we approve item 9, considering that our people reviewed the legal document and that the $40,000 is committed before we release the funds.
Okay.
And having said that, I have trust in our executive director that the money's not going to go out the door anyway, but at least we have it down in writing.
Right.
Okay?
Do I have a second for that motion? Second. We have a second. Any more discussion? Commissioner Stoll.
Ask that gentleman a question. You stated that forever there will be allowed, hunting and fishing would be allowed. What about trapping?
Trapping.
Why easements always have been trapped?
Trapping would be specifically to correct an issue that's happening on the property. So trapping would be on a case-by-case basis on the property.
Meaning what?
So if there's a reason for us to be trapping animals on the property, then we would allow for that to happen. So if the beavers are damming up the river and it's causing issues to surrounding properties, we'd allow for the beaver to be trapped and removed from the property. That's just an example.
So, in other words, if it's not, a fur bearer is not doing any damage, there's no trapping allowed.
If it's causing some other issue, I can't really think of an example of another issue that a fur bearer might be causing on a property, then we would evaluate that and allow for the trapping if necessary. So it's really a case-by-case basis for allowing for trapping on the property.
Yes.
I want to remind everyone of what Ben shared with us last time about the importance of this property for fisheries management. And Ben, you might want to speak to that a little bit because I think, you know, given that it was last month when you presented the value of this, not just for the hunting access and the fishing access, but for the management of the fishery species. This is important. This is an important critical unit for us. Could you expand a little bit on that, Ben?
Sure, yep. Yeah, not only does this property support wild brook trout, it's encompassed by a stratified drift aquifer, and it promotes groundwater seeping into the stream in this particular property. So it normally would seem like a warmer river system with some wetlands adjacent to it, but because it has this aquifer in it, the stream temperatures remain, unreasonably cold, unexpectedly cold. We deployed temperature loggers there last summer, and despite the heat and drought we had last year, it stayed within the 60 degrees throughout the entire summer. The property is surrounded by other wild brook trout streams, and this area gives an opportunity for brook trout to interpopulate with other populations, spreading genetic diversity. It's also very well suited for development. We're getting a good deal from the current landowners to purchase this property. They'd like to see it go into conservation. if this didn't move forward, it's likely that the property would be subdivided, and the large field would probably contain, multiple houses, which could potentially, disrupt that soil aquifer relationship that we have going on right now, and the wells from the houses that could be there, could take away that groundwater. So.
Do we have any, Commissioner Gray?
You had me in favor until it was said, and correct me if I'm wrong here, this is majorly going towards the wild bush correct?
Yeah, we don't stock the West Branch Warner River. No, there's enough wild brook trout there.
Commissioner Stoll brought up a good point about, the hunting, fishing, and the trapping. My concern is going towards the public, but again, now what we're doing is, in my opinion only, now we're concentrating more on just wild brook trout than anything else. Correct? That's why you want it.
Well, brook trout, wild brook trout are a focus of this project, but in my mind, the guaranteed access for people to enjoy them, to fish for them, is a big part of it too.
If I could step in, Diane Timmons, Inland Fisheries Chief. As Ben mentioned, this is not a stocked water body, so we're not focusing on anything that isn't already occurring. So that's really important to note. We're taking a wild population, we're taking an area in nature that supports a fishery for anglers, and we're just protecting that. So it's not currently stocked, and this is providing a fishery as it stands right now for anglers to utilize. What this purchase does is enable that access in perpetuity, as well as protect that wild population that's currently sustaining and providing the opportunity. We are not stocking this area. That's really important to note. It's doing it all on its own, and if anything changes in that current circumstance, that could go defunct.
Ben, these funds that we're considering come from the Fisheries Habitat Fund. So they're from fees paid by fishing license holders into a Fisheries Habitat Fund.
Yep, correct, yep.
If I may. So I had a chance to walk the property with Ben and Andy last Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't recall what day it was, and I'm not a biologist, so I can't speak to some of the technical aspects of it, but you can see the development pressure that is in that part of Newberry and Bradford. It is a 40-acre flat, essentially hayfield adjacent to the river bottom area, and there's no question that if the property's not protected, it's probably 2x the value to a real estate developer just putting in 5-acre lots. So it is from that perspective it's completely obvious to me that given how close it is to other properties we've conserved or been partners in conservation, given the presence of brook trout in the stream and tributaries around it and the pressure on it to develop it, it's a property well worth our contributing to its preservation.
Any other commissioners have any other questions? Not seeing any more questions, let's bring it to vote. The motion on the table is to approve $75,000 along with confirmation that the $40,000 is received to ensure that money, as well as the conservation easement is properly upholding Fish and Game's interest. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. You guys worked for that. All right. Information items. First is our financial statement and commissioner budget. Hello?
Commission, Director Simic, Kathy Labonte, Chief of the Business Division. You should have your financial statement dated March 2026. I don't really have too much big news except a little bit of something exciting. We finally made, it's not on your financial statement, but just the end of last week, we made a almost $2 million draw finally from the feds for payroll through the end of December. And that draw included about $300,000 of indirect charges. So that will be on your financial statement for next month, and it also added those federal funds to our coffers. We changed the way that we are accounting for our federal grants this fiscal year due to some audit issues. So it has taken my staff and myself considerable time to learn this new system and figure out just exactly how to make it work for us. Hence the slowness of getting the federal funds in. But if you look on page 3, under licenses, the bottom half of your page where our revenue pots are broken up by category, we're pretty similar to where we were last year. Lifetime licenses, especially for newborns, are really on the high. We just reconciled the entire calendar year for 2025, and we had over 1,400 newborn lifetime licenses sold during the calendar year.
Is there any questions on the financial statements?
And I think what the budget means is that piece of paper that I hand out to you every commission meeting, just to show you your account status.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We all set?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Next one is the overview of proposed revisions to trout pond rules. Diane Timmons.
So clearly not John McGee. Diane Timmons, Inland Fisheries Division Chief. I am doing this presentation for John today. He is out, not feeling well. Oh my God, even with my glasses. Can you find my presentation? Not even kidding.
What's the title? That's trout pond, right?
Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so as I said, Diane Timmons, Inland Fisheries Division Chief. Today I want to present the draft proposals that we have created internally and vetted. I do, whoops, oh my God, just bear with me. Okay. These drafts that we do, part of the process is working with the strategic plan and where we're utilizing science to maintain opportunity and also maintain the environment in the way that is best for the fish and the resources that we oversee. Also, part of the strategy was to look at rules and obviously try to make them pertinent, but also make it easy for our constituents to understand. So I've added an extra slide here that you don't have in your presentation. I added that because we did have a discussion with one of the commissioners, and it was brought to our attention that there might be some misunderstandings, and so I wanted to just go through the rules process for you so that we're all on the same page. So basically, part of our process is collecting data, and that comes from a variety of sources. So that comes from our fall netting, that comes from angler surveys, that comes from habitat assessments, so looking at, for example, port crossings or thermal regime changes due to various things, whether it be infrastructure, development, et cetera, looking at that environment and how that's changed over time, or if it has changed, and also what the management strategy is, what our goals are in the realm of, is this water body something that can produce fish bigger sizes, higher catch rates, or is this a water body that we're going to stock continuously on an annual basis because the water body itself is not one that can hold those fish over, and so we're just doing it to provide opportunity, which happens in a variety of locations. We then have discussions internally with our various divisions, so law enforcement included, but where we actually have discussions on various things, whether it makes sense, whether it doesn't, what do you think, what's your experiences out in the woods, et cetera, and what are your findings, what are you hearing from various anglers. Then we draft proposals, and we have meetings with you like this today, where we're at this point at current step is bullet 3, or third bullet, and where we're presenting these to you. You have them in your packet, you have the categories that we've drafted, and then we will also be seeking stakeholder input where we have information meetings and meet with various groups to get that feedback back, get that social aspect, get what they're seeing out on the landscape and what their findings are, where we then come back and sort of vet all of that and work through it, and then we will draft final proposals that would go to JLCAR for the rule process. And currently, the other thing that's ongoing is the management plan, just to make sure everybody's on understanding where we're at right now. That position is vacant again. We are working through the process to get that position hired, but unfortunately, it has been more vacant than it's been filled. We do have some internal discussions that we've been working with on the development of that, but it is nowhere near ready a final document or a draft document at this point that we can give out. We are hoping to fill that position in the next month and be able to continue our processes. But in the interim, the management plan is a long process. It is not something that just is a one-page fact sheet. It's a vetted process. Usually we involve other states where we're working with them and they're reviewing and going forward to make it the best document that we possibly can, looking at things that they've learned and things that we've learned, and you come up with a well-vetted document. It also has public input component, so there's also that. In an effort to not prolong opportunity, we have been working on this data for a long time. We have never had a management plan in the past. We've always utilized data and brought our stuff forward. So these proposals today are no different than that. We didn't want to limit any angler opportunity any longer on these particular ones that we've put forward. They are not all of the trout ponds. These are the ones that we've vetted internally and feel comfortable moving forward to that public input process. So just want to make sure folks are on the same page. So as far as our key messages with these proposals is to increase opportunity, utilize good habitat where we can, and protect sensitive fisheries with additional rules and whatnot through the rule process. So the overall is to keep 71 ponds as trout ponds. So these are the ones where I'm saying we have not moved forward on these. These are 71 of the 152, I think it was, might have been 55. But anyway, those are staying exactly the same because we're not ready to make proposals on those yet. We have actually started working with a fellowship student to come up with a strategy to start doing more assessments on some of these remote ponds because they take a lot of time, and unfortunately it's a lot with a 7-staff division. So we're going to move 56 ponds to general regulation, and so this is where I was saying where the habitat has changed. Some of that, most of it is warm water related, so we have a lot. The species composition has completely changed, as well as the thermal regime has changed. And so some of these are no longer holding fish over. They're no longer holding trout. We're getting fish kill reports on an annual basis. And we've also surveyed some of these and gone, and especially last year with the drought, we had some locations that were not even surveyable because they were basically puddles. So moving those into an opportunity, recognizing that it may be a seasonal fishery, but a seasonal fishery is better than a zero fishery because the fish aren't holding over or the opportunity's gone in August when the temperatures get too hot. And the third one, keep 3 ponds as wild trout. The example there, I will tell you that we did actually have 5 and had a whole thought process of wild trout, we'll keep those as natural fisheries. And during the internal process, we actually discussed back and forth and determined that we didn't want to take away the current opportunity in the other 2 locations because in wild trout ponds, it's a no harvest rule regime, and in the 2 other locations are actually doing really well, and they're allowed to harvest fish. So we didn't want to take that opportunity away, and that's Boundary and Phillips Pond, just to give you those 2 as an example. The other thing we did, thinking of the simplification piece, is we had multiple locations that were fly fishing only. We did not change the fly fishing only status. We did change the catch, well, it's 2 fish, the bag limit. We did change that. What we've also noted over time is that a lot of fly anglers tend to not keep their fish. So we basically took the 5 fish and moved that down to 2. We had 2 categories. It was 5 fish or 2 fish. We moved that down to 2 fish. And we'll be looking for feedback on those as to whether or not anglers have an issue with that, have an issue with any of this really, but that one where we just moved the bag limit, we're eager to hear. But part of that was, like I said, most of it was catch and release anyway, and it combined the rules to make them simpler. Stocking will remain the same. Just want to make that clear that that was one of the other questions that we've received thus far. Is that, for example, the fingerling stocking will remain. Those ponds that are fingerling stocked aerially will remain the same. Those are all ones that haven't moved. And then stocking in other locations, like some folks had asked, you know, if we move it into general reg, are we going to stop stocking? And the answer is absolutely not. We're trying to increase the opportunity. We would rather have folks harvest the fish out before they are susceptible to poor conditions or poor overwinter conditions where they don't survive anyway. We'd rather have anglers catch them and take that as an opportunity. And with that, I'll take any questions. And this, I will say too, sorry, one other thing, just making sure. So as I mentioned, some of these are warm water conditions. Right now, with some of the there's other species involved. You can see a yellow perch there. There's also bass in a lot of these water bodies. And so right now, the way they are, we limit that opportunity for many anglers, bass anglers as well. So warm water anglers can't go after October 15th, for example. And the reality is that a lot of these locations hold those species in perpetuity. So that's part of the reason is opening them up all year long, because there's a variety of opportunities for many, many different angler groups. Sorry, now I'll take questions.
Commissioner Green.
I think my question is going to be more directed to the director. Where are we standing this year on the kids' derbies?
We're not hosting kids' derbies this year.
The what?
We're not sponsoring the kids' derbies this year again.
So this will be the second year in a row?
Yeah, we announced that last year, that we were putting a hold on kids' derbies for last year and this year. We announced it that way last year. And at this point, we're still not hosting kids' derbies.
And just for clarification, you can still hold a kids' derby.
Yeah.
We're just not matching.
Right.
And in holding a kids' derby without us matching, you're actually enables you to charge a fee, which can then be put in toward the charge for the fish.
And all of the derby hosts are made aware of this already.
Yeah.
They've already been corresponding with inland fisheries.
Diane, can you provide the commission and the public for each of the 56 ponds, the factors that caused you to determine that a change in status was warranted?
Yes.
So I think that would be helpful. As I look through these, some are obvious to me, some aren't.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking, if you've got warm water conditions, low oxygen in the summer, if you've got winter kill because of eutrophic water, if you could explain those factors, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yep.
To understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And actually, that brings up a really good point. So we do have that. Let me answer that. And then the other thing that we're working on, too, is actually changing some of the stocking of species. So some of those locations that are south that tend to be really warm that were stocked with brook trout, actually looking at, is it a better place for rainbows or browns? That being said, recognize that the past couple of years we've been short on browns. Because of the various hatchery condition circumstances. So as we get going with the new facility, that is absolutely one of the things that we're looking at is changing our percentage rates of the species themselves.
I wanted to add one more point to the Kids Derbies piece is we explored other avenues. We explored purchasing fish from other avenues to be able to host them, and it was not feasible. The suppliers couldn't supply enough. So at this point, given that we had announced it last year, we decided to continue with not providing fish as a match and allowing the Derby hosts to be able to charge and do their own derbies and still hold them.
Any other questions?
Yes. Did I understand it correctly that once the new hatchery's on board, next fall or whenever, in the fishing season of 2027, we'll be able to support derbies? Is that correct?
Well, we'll assess it again.
We're going to assess it
Yeah,
again.
we'll see
Okay.
how well the new hatchery is producing, and we'll assess what we have. We have talked about some different ideas regarding derbies and tournaments and things, and so we'll be working with our stakeholders on those.
Yeah, and if I could add, just for full clarity, so the closure of the ARPA funding is December 2026, this December. We're on board, we're doing good. But I will add that a critical period is in the fall for us to be able to hold the eggs that we need for that following year's production. So right now, we are really giving hugs and kisses to the construction team because we really need them to be ready with the hatchery building in October, which is 2 months ahead of the normal closure of the schedule. So we're really hoping that that will happen and we can get those eggs in there so that we're not in another deficit. I mean, right now, every other facility is 100% maxed, and we are raising brook trout in Connex boxes that we have created a hatchery in the backyard of the New Hampton project. So if anything goes defunct for that hatchery to be operational in October, we're going to be in a deficit again.
Commissioner Stoll.
I don't know what General Wright does, but Back Lake is a trout pond.
Yes.
You want it to go to General Wright. Does
Yeah.
that mean I can go up on Back Lake and put tip-ups up in the wintertime and ice fish?
Correct. That would be open all year long, and that's where the informational sessions are really important to get feedback, so I hope you're there.
I'll believe from what I'm looking here, you're gonna get a lot of feedback.
Yep. That's what we're looking for. That's what we need, so,
The last time you did this, you started a firestorm,
yeah,
and it took quite a while to put it out.
yep,
And your comment was, well, we wanted to know what you was thinking.
yep.
I'll tell you.
So I hope it's gonna be more.
Not a very nice way to do it.
No, I'm hoping it's going to be more discussional because that's what we need. That's where we can get the feedback from the public. I can meet with individual groups, but this is our only opportunity to be able to get feedback from a variety of groups, and we can't do that if the environment is not safe.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Cool.
So I think you probably already answered this, but I'm going to ask it so that I get a clear answer from me. So there was some forward and then reverse action as far as wild trout ponds. You
Yeah.
thought about increasing and came back.
Yeah.
Is that the way you expect it to stay, or is this this is a proposal for now with the understanding that as other studies are done, other wild, if appropriate, other ponds or flatwater lakes, whatever would be designated as wild trout ponds?
Yeah, so there's 71 of those, right now, these are just proposals. So all categories are drafts. Really important to note, we are in the draft stage. We are looking for input from the public to be able to make those final discussions and have that and make the final, have the discussions and make those final decisions. And so these are all part of it. Like if someone has something that, we've had folks bring things forward, like, hey, what about, Joe's Pond in Warner, you know what I mean? And you're like, Joe's Pond, what? And so this is all part of the discussion. And of the 71 that are still trout ponds, we had different discussions and different ideas, but we didn't feel comfortable moving forward. So this is where the public can give us some more feedback, and who knows what it will bring. But simultaneously, as I mentioned, we're also working with a fellowship student to start planning and creating a calendar for dates where we're going to do assessments. And she'll be working on those with a team this summer and probably next. So as we collect more data, we draft more things. So, or we don't. I mean, we may determine that it's exactly where it should be, and that's fine too.
Any other questions?
Dan, can you, to the extent you can you provide the commission with advance notice of when you're having these listening sessions?
100%.
And the public too? I don't know whether you're planning just general open house style listening sessions,
Yeah.
but the more opportunity for feedback and for us to hear that feedback as well would be appreciated.
Yeah, 100%. And to be honest, the director and I haven't talked about this yet, but I'm thinking the schedule should probably be drafted in the next week.
Yes.
And we'll get that on our calendar and work with public affairs too to do press releases on when those dates will be.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next is overview of license fee increases. The director, you're on.
Thank you, Chairman. So I wanted to speak briefly about the department's current operational and financial pressures. And some of you are aware of it. Some of you have been working with us through the strategic plan. Some of you have been working through the sustainability committee. But nonetheless, the department is experiencing steadily increasing operational demands alongside rising costs across all program areas. It's not limited to just one or two areas. It's across the whole spectrum. Search and rescue missions are occurring more frequently with increased visitation in New Hampshire. And as those grow, these missions become more complex, requiring additional equipment, expanded training, increased personnel, things like that. Wildlife and fisheries management responsibilities, you've heard a lot about those over the last couple months. Those are also intensifying as habitat pressures and public use increase, environmental changes increase, and at the same time we are experiencing reductions in the federal operations, and they have shifted quite a lot of administrative work and oversight and responsibilities to the states since the shutdowns that started occurring last year. So we're taking on more of those responsibilities. This is aside from the obvious things that we all face with inflation and on vehicles and fuel and equipment. But collectively, these pressures are widening the gap between the department's our responsibilities and the resources we have to meet them. And so given those trends, we are proposing an initial exploration, and I call it exploration, whether we could target some particular license and permits and do a fee adjustment for 2027. The idea here is to see if it's even feasible. The purpose of this exploration is to really understand whether or not a modest and yet equitable adjustment to certain licenses could help ensure a long-term financial stability for the agency, but also maintain the high-quality services that we want to provide and we've been providing, while giving, keeping pace with the given rising operational costs. So at this stage, the department is preparing to gather information and evaluate these options and seek public input before determining whether or not we'll go through a formal rule proposal process. To initiate this, we did submit some language to LBA so that we could begin to have these outreach meetings. So in order to support this, what we're trying to do, or what we're going to be doing, is during the month of May, we are considering hosting 4 or 5 public information sessions across the state to discuss the concept of potential fee increases and to hear directly from our stakeholders. Now, to be upfront, prior to May, you guys will receive, by May 1st, you will receive notification of where those meetings are, and I'll be giving you a briefing on what we're going to be sharing and proposing to the public as far as the licenses, and I'll just state some of them here today. We are considering a $2 increase to the standard fishing license, to the standard hunting license, to the combination fishing hunting license, and to the saltwater fishing license and archery license. We are also considering or proposing a $15 increase to the dog trial permit. And then we are also proposing a $5 increase to the individual hike safe card and the family hike safe card. And again, the idea is we're putting these forward as proposals. In addition, we are considering a $175 increase to the infant license. The infant license right now is at $300, and we are proposing a $475 fee instead. These are all going to be proposed and brought forward to the public during these information sessions so that we can get feedback and understand what the public's interests are, what their concerns are. I have a few things I can say about why, but the main thing for looking at these adjustments is to maintain the core services, align the fees with the program costs that we are experiencing, ensure that we have long-term viability of our lifetime licenses. Because right now we have, well, you just heard 400 this last year, but we're averaging about 1,200 of those infant licenses sold every year. And when you look and you do the math, when those licenses, that cohort comes due at age 16, that's a $70,000 fee that we're not receiving at that first year. And as you go through time, it's somewhat astounding when you do the multiplication. It ends up to be in the millions of dollars. So there is some concern. We obviously want to make it a value for people. We want to encourage that recruitment, but we need to be thinking about how are we also maintaining the sustainability of the organization. And obviously the Hike Safe, we want to continue to support the search and rescue missions, which are so vital and critical to this state and to our visitors and residents. So with that, I just wanted to at least put this forward to you. I will be sharing with you more extensive information that outlines all of this, so you'll have the background. You'll also have the dates of the meetings, and I encourage you all to please join us when you can. We will also be doing a lot of work with our Public Affairs Division to put things out on our webpage and put notices out to the public. I'm open to hear some feedback, definitely looking for ways that we can maintain this quality work that we do here and uphold the fiscal responsibilities that we have for the state while supporting the stewardship and obviously our resources and our constituents that enjoy those resources. That's what I've had.
Questions? Commissioner?
Is it safe to say that we are looking to generate more revenue to cover our operational costs, and the fees are maybe just one part of an overall plan in the future to try to
Yes.
to do that?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. That's an excellent point. Yes, so the fees are a small part of the plan. The other piece, which many of you are familiar with, but we have put through legislation, House Bill 1199 is moving forward, and within within the context of that bill, we have requested funding from our lifetime license fund to support the idea of creating or developing a new customer relations management system, which would then improve our relationship and the ease of our customers. It'll improve their experience with us. We'll be able to have multiple contact points with them, a variety of things. I don't want to continue on it, Commissioner. But yes, it's part of that package. This is a collective that we would be doing together in the hopes that not only do we increase our exposure with our customer base, we increase our exposure with those who maybe are not our normal customers, and we also generate some revenue to just maintain the operations.
Commissioner Train.
When was our last increase?
So some of the fees, it's been since 2005, more recently 2017 is when we had an increase.
Follow-up question.
Go ahead.
When those increases were done, did it sustain it for this long, or are we still sort of, lack of better words, in the red?
In the red in the sense of license sales?
Yeah.
No, we're not in the red any longer with license sales. You typically will see a loss initially. Across the nation, the average loss is 2.3 licenses per dollar raised. And when you do the math for our licenses, we're still going to come out, if we take those losses, we'll still probably generate about $1 million at the minimum in advance of what we have. Now, that said, during 2017, there were variations in the losses depending on the type of license. Some of them were insignificant, not even at the 2.9 per dollar, and some were a little bit more. So it tends to balance out, but I anticipate we may see a little bit less numbers of license holders the first couple of years, and then it'll balance out. Financially, we will still be in the black.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I do have one question. You kind of just mentioned it. So with this increase, how much increased revenue are we expecting per year?
So when you couple it with the habitat, wildlife habitat, fisheries habitat fees, it can be as much as $1.4 million.
Commissioner Temple.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. And is it correct for me to assume that our strategic planning commission or committee has had input with the fee structure?
Well, I'll let the chairman speak to that, I guess.
Not specifically the license fee structure. The last meeting we had was in March, and the conversation was about the habitat and fisheries fees.
Yeah.
And if anyone remembers differently, I'm looking at John, or is it my memory correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had various.
I think there was an acknowledgement that this was going to be on the list. It was readily acknowledged, so that you can't escape this, you know.
So with the potential of $1.4 million increase in revenue, is that correct to assume that as we present our budgets going forward, we won't be taking from rainy day fund or?
Yeah.
I don't want to say the rainy day fund.
I think we only got, 0.22% from the general fund, so.
There is no rainy day fund.
Yeah.
The rainy day fund no longer exists for us. At this point, this biennium, we are operating on $100,000 given through the general fund, and that is dedicated to the non-game program only. $100,000 for a $40 million budget.
So the rainy day fund has gone away because we have depleted it to meet operations over the last 2 or 3 years?
Well, I would say it's a combination of things. Typically in the past, we had been granted some general fund money.
Okay.
We were not granted general fund money this biennium. In addition, operations have increased. Pricing of the operations have increased. So it's a combination effect, basically, is what we're seeing.
Yeah. I'm surprised $2 is enough.
Well, I think we're just trying to not stick with that.
We're honestly, yes. We're trying to keep ourselves still competitive in the market. We're trying not to, affect our constituents too terribly, honestly. And so, this is a start for what we see we need, at least immediately. And once we get the CRM in place, thank you again, Commissioner, for bringing that point, I think that's going to help us as well in many different ways to generate revenue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cavaney.
Thank you. And I'm not sure that we've had any exchange or discussion here at the full commission meeting, but I think it's been made clear that in 3 out of the last 5 years, we have received some money from the general fund across town, all right? And I'm not sure that everybody is aware of that, but what is clear is we're not getting it this year. So for the purpose of illustration, with the monies that we received from across town, okay, which might help illustrate how that allowed us to continue to function, with that being off the table at this point, why it's causing real pressure on the ability to operate. For me, I'm asking a question, but is it legitimate to express that as an example to the public, to anyone who's interested, how this, monetarily, there's increasing pressure on us?
Yes, I think it's a valid point. I mean, we just recently made some little posters to help people understand how we are funded, because very many of our constituents believe that we are funded through the general fund and through license sales, when primarily it's federal money and license sales that supports us. To be exact, $2.2 million is what we are in a deficit from general fund. That's what we were not allocated, $2.2 million. And it has made an impact, along with the rising prices and cost of doing business.
If I may.
Yep.
I'll email it around again, but at the January meeting, I handed out some handouts that Kathy created for our committee. And one of the handouts is a summary of the general fund dollars that we've been appropriated, I think going back as far as 2014. So if you have your records from that meeting, it's in there, but I'll send it around so you can all see it. But the director's point is, I think, absolutely accurate. While we've received general fund dollars to varying amounts over the last, almost every biennium over the last 10 years, we did not in the most recent one, but because of increased costs in a whole host of areas, the budget that was passed by the legislature last June calls on us to spend down almost our entire Fish and Game Fund asset, which is about $12 million going into this fiscal year, right? We had about $12 million in our Fish and Game Fund. The budget the legislature passed projects us using those funds to fund our operations over last fiscal year, which we're in the end of now, and then the next fiscal year ending next June. So, Bruce, I don't know if that's what you're referring to when you say
I call it a rainy day fund, but
yeah,
the
so
Fish and Game Fund, we're spending that down.
Depending on unexpended funds, there's always some, but you can expect that it'll be either near zero or under $1 million or $2 probably.
Yeah, to be frank, I mean, I'm looking at, we're going to probably land somewhere between, $0 to $500,000 left in that fund. And that is not enough to operate an agency.
So Eric and I have mentioned how long we've been on the commission, but I remember, and Eric, you may remember too, at one point, I think we were down around 1.4 million in the fund. So to give you a sense of how low it has been in the past, it's been low in the past. That's not unheard of, but never that low. And the legislature has never expected us to fund our operations from that fund to this extent. So.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner, sorry. That was a very good explanation. I apologize, I didn't quite understand what you meant by rainy day fund.
That's fine, I'm not always clear in what I ask, but that's the
Fishing
point,
game fund
is you're
is-
gonna run out of money
Yes, yes,
by spending down the fishing game fund
yes,
in a matter of a short window.
yes.
I think another important thing, a question that many commissioners, myself included, have had is what our license fees look like to our surrounding states, where we're always worried about that. And I think that's an important lens that we need to look at from a marketing perspective. But the part that we kind of always never realized, and you provided a great sheet for me recently about the state of Maine, is how much money our neighbors are actually getting out of general funds, and we're not getting any. So they don't have to charge as much for a hunting license to survive, and that's an important piece to this conversation that unfortunately we have to be conscious of, and hopefully the public understands that, that this is really out of need, not out of greed, you know?
Yeah, the Maine's operational budget is $80 million, and they receive over $40 million in general fund to support that.
Any other questions for the
I just
deputy?
wanted to say, I personally have had a lot of use in the past with the CRM and the effect that it can have on a business. Especially a business like this one that really is in its infancy in terms of being able to manage relations with customers. And to be able to have a program that's multifaceted, that can literally send Bruce an email and say, hey, I noticed on this date last year you bought this license and you haven't bought yours this year, here's a link in the email if you want to do it, and that is generated automatically. I noticed you have a hunting license, but have you thought about going fishing? It will generate revenue. It absolutely, being able to, and that's just one facet of what a CRM is able to do. It really will let us to be able to track, to create touch points, and drive revenue through sales of licenses, which will be a tremendous benefit to the department, I think.
Yeah, and to that point, as we were saying, it's a package, right? The CRM, it's this, and then you can expect, commissioners, fair warning, that we as an agency will probably be bringing some draft proposed language to you for consideration for bills for the next legislative session. That may include things like, perhaps creating a paddler's license or something like that. We have several different ideas that we've been working through with senior staff, and once we get those finalized, we'll bring them forward to you all for consideration, and then based on what you decide, we may or may not have some legislation that we would be bringing forward as well. So it's all of that in one package.
Any other questions for the director on this?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, additional business. This might not be the most appropriate part for it, but I'm going to do this part here. Obviously, all the commissioners received an email from the director about some of the staff who had won some awards, and I thought it was great for us to recognize it publicly. Lieutenant Ober has been awarded the New Hampshire Conservation Officer of the Year Award by the Northeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife, or NIAFWA, in honor of his exemplary service and commitment to conservation law enforcement. Laura Ryder has received this year's Conservation Information Education Award from NIAFWA, recognizing her outstanding professionalism and leadership in public education, outreach, and community engagement. Additionally, Diane Timmons, Alex Sitek, and Zach Curran have been honored with the Governor's Award for Energy Efficiency for their work on the New Hampton Hatchery Project, a significant achievement that reflects innovation, collaboration, and forward-thinking stewardship. So congratulations from this commission to all the staff and the hard work that goes into that type of stuff. So great work. Well, we're on the topic of awards. Earlier today, we did present our commissioner awards, and I would like to just read them now in the full commission meeting so everybody in the public is aware. The Landowner Appreciation Award went to Dave Olson. The Habitat Stewardship Award went to George Embley. The Volunteer Award went to John Martell. And the Conservation Organization Award went to the Granite State Chapter of the Rough Grouse Society. And the Search and Rescue Award went to the Upper Valley Wilderness Response. Yes. the deadline to submit people for our commission awards is December, and as commissioners, you can put in people or organizations or whatnot for awards, so make sure that those are submitted. You can either go online and do it through a little form we have, or you can email it directly to Tanya. Again, December 31st, hard cutoff, right? Do we have old business? Any old business? Not seeing any. I'm going to move to committee reports, and I think I'll...
I do have some old business. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk.
You can talk. Absolutely.
You in the back.
Sorry, Diane Clemens, Inland Fisheries Division Chief. A couple meetings ago, I actually meant to do this last meeting, so I apologize. There was some mention about Spofford Lake and tournaments, and it was in reference to the opening day of trout ponds, which is the fourth Saturday in April. And there was some conversation about Spofford Lake being considered that there were tournaments held on that opening day, and that is correct. But Spofford Lake, just for clarity, is not a trout pond. It's a pond with special rules, and its opening day is actually April 1. So I just want to make that clear that trout ponds, there weren't any with opening day tournaments. So just so folks know that. So Spofford is not a trout pond. Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're on the roll for old business, I think a meeting or two ago, you all have requested to have a fisheries habitat program to provide some updates on projects and information about the program. So they have generated a 3 or 4 page document here that you all have in front of you that will tell you a little bit of the updates on some of the programs. And I wanted to make sure that you saw that. I thought this was time since we're doing old business.
Perfect. Yep.
If you have any further questions regarding those projects, please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you. All right. Committee reports. Commissioner Stoll, would you like to do your legislative? I know you have a couple votes you got to do.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We did meet before the awards ceremony, and we discussed a couple of 3 bills. We had discussion on House Bill 1603. A motion was made to support the Senate amendment, and it was seconded, so I will move right now that the commission support House Bill 1603 as amended by the Senate. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Any questions of that?
Quick explanation, just for those folks that might not be aware, the Senate did to Commissioner Stoll's point, a revision on it. Some of the concerns that I certainly sounded the alarm about many times were addressed, which I think was great. I think it removed a lot of the legal concerns about facing issues in the future. So I think everybody did a great job of coming together for that. So I'm certainly going to support this going forward.
Any other discussion? You want me to run this, Mr. Chairman, or you?
Oh, yeah, I guess so, right? All right, so we have a motion on the table to support 1603, the amendment put forward by the Senate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Next bill we took up was 1199. So, Melissa, don't go away, because you're going to be on the next one. We had discussions. There was a motion made to support House Bill 1199 as amended, and it is seconded. And at this time, I would like to make a motion to support House Bill 1199 as amended by Amendment 1260.
Seconded.
The motion has been made to support 1199. Any questions or any discussion? Not seeing any discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
The last one that we discussed was one that Senate Bill 640 FM. We were not tracking it. It was a AI, artificial intelligence bill, until the House got a hold of it, and they came up with an amendment that is not acceptable to us. The main bill that was introduced and how it was amended by the Senate, we don't have any problem with, but we do have a problem with the amendment number 1522 to Senate Bill 640. And if you've got any questions on that, talking about platforms and all this other stuff on the computer stuff, that lady back here is the one that can answer. I can't even think about answering them. So I would like to make a motion that we go on record as being opposed to amendment number 1522 of Senate Bill 640.
Second. We have a second discussion. Does anybody have questions or need further clarification on Amendment 1522? Would you like to give a quick, too long didn't read?
I was going to ask,
Commissioner Poole.
clarification would be awesome.
Yeah, okay. We're getting it right now.
So the original bill had to do with artificial intelligence as it relates to folks that are licensed under the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification, which is why we weren't following it. The amendment that is scheduled to be heard tomorrow would create within the Department of Information Technology an artificial intelligence and software engineering division, and they would hope to do a few different things. Some would be to develop, deploy, and maintain software applications used by all state agencies, use artificial intelligence-assisted software development tools to increase efficiency, reduce costs, and accelerate application deployment, develop and maintain internal software, as well as digital platforms that are public-facing. They would provide application engineering support to state agencies, evaluate and replace existing software systems that are used by state agencies where doing so could provide cost savings or improve functionality, and develop and maintain AI tools to assist state employees in performing administrative and regulatory functions. And one of the other elements would be that any of this work that would be done would, of course, have to comply with state cybersecurity and data protection standards. The effective date of this amendment would be July 1st of this year. And so in part of the, there would be a fund that would be created as well, and some of the way that would be funded would be through the cancellation of current contracts that agencies have with external software companies. So while it's a lofty, I mean, some of it makes, the uniformity across state agencies and creating efficiencies makes some sense. This is just a really, really compressed timeline to get some of those things done. And there would be concerns with not only our agency, but other agencies that work a lot with federal funding. We're beholden to those federal platforms. And so if the state couldn't use those, that could be very problematic when it comes to the federal funding. And as we've discussed the CRM in 1199 today, that's something that the state we've got a bill well on its way to hopefully being passed to allow us, it's been passed by both bodies, awaiting the governor's signature. And so that could undermine this, if this bill were to be passed, that could undermine the development internally of that CRM.
I have a question. Is this the non-germane amendment that requires either the IT Council or DOIT to determine that they don't have the internal resources to develop the software that you would like to purchase from an outside vendor and certify that they can't do it more efficiently? And then is that where the funds come from? Am I remembering that correctly? That if they determine they can do it cheaper, then you have to go with the in-house solution? Yes, and that's definitely the preference would be to do that. And
if anything, if an agency wanted to procure any external software, there would be, and it was going to cost more than $250,000 annually, it would have to go through this review. So there's a lot of elements squished into this amendment.
Any other questions? Thank you. The motion on the table is to oppose the House Amendment 1522. Not seeing any more questions. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Anything else on?
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
that's okay. Hey, I wasn't paying attention for a minute there too. Thank you. Governance Committee. Next month, we're going to be going over a document that the Governance Committee has been working on for many months now to update the handbook. So part of that has been to go back and look into what previous commissions have changed and might not have been updated and whatnot. So between now and May, we're all going to be receiving a document that's going to show all these changes that this committee has been working very hard on. And then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about it in May in our regular commission meeting. So bring your input on things that you might see. When do you think we'll have that document out to the commission?
Our goal was mid-month to be able to, so right around the first of next month, so between the two meetings, to provide an updated electronic version of the entire document. If someone cannot, and I'll send an email when that electronic version is transmitted. If that becomes too difficult to manipulate, the meat and potatoes is within the handbook section, and we can arrange to have that printed if it needs to be as a draft. But then the idea is to come to the May meeting, we hope prepared to discuss that in detail, and then we'll make those final revisions, send you another electronic copy in between May and June, and in June, hopefully vote on it. Hopefully that's not too convoluted, but, so discuss it in May, vote on it in June.
And if I could request that when we have the meeting, that there are physical printed copies of the section that we are going over for the May meeting. It doesn't have to be the entire handbook, just the section of the handbook that we are actually doing. Any questions on that? Yes.
With the computer skills that are available, when you send it digitally, okay, by via email for review, but I've heard it from many others, like to focus on what's highlighted so they really know what's been changed. Do you think we can do that, Dave? Somebody will.
I'm going to commit Lieutenant Mancini and myself to making that happen. Thank goodness for Lieutenant Mancini saving my life.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys have been doing some hard work on that committee, and I really appreciate it. Which is something that Commissioner Green had folks working on too, so it's been a long time going. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'd like to make a suggestion that from working on that before and the amount of work Dave has probably done on it now, the day that he presents it, we should probably keep some presentation to a minimum.
Yes, we are.
Not to interfere on that.
Absolutely.
That's an important thing to get done.
Yep. I believe we only have one presentation for May. Yes. Correct. Yes, we are going to be doing that because that is the point, is to spend some.
So Fish and Game has a minute presentation.
They're going to have one presentation, yeah. Okay, any other committee reports for our regular committees?
So the Resources and Infrastructure Committee is considering having another meeting in the next month or so, especially surrounding the hatchery. And if they've started to make some significant progress there, there's tanks, there's buildings, that kind of stuff, we can do that. But do we want to consider perhaps the entire commission, or maybe we could try to set something up in the near future where everyone could come and they could organize it so whoever wanted to attend could take a tour at that point to see where the project is at.
Yeah, I'd say let's try to work that out with the director. I also don't want us to get in the way of making sure that we have fish in the tanks in October, so.
Oh, no, bring your shovel and your work
Oh,
boots.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you bring your toolbox, you're welcome.
Yeah. I mean, all the times that the committee has been there, a lot of it was pouring concrete or digging holes or whatever it is, but now you can tangibly see it and what's going on now. It's going to start to make some sense, and so I think it would be
great to get the commission up there.
a good point in which to at least go up and see it and see what it's all about and the direction it's headed.
Yeah, we'll work with Commissioner McConville on that and
Okay.
get it scheduled.
Perfect. Before I go to the Seacoast report, I do have one other thing, and I don't remember the full procedure on how we do it, but we do need to form an election committee. And I don't know if we need to do that by vote, do we?
You will choose a election committee. It has to be done. You have to have the vote in June.
Right.
Because fiscal year starts in July.
Okay.
So what takes place is the June, March, you have your committee in place, and you choose whoever you want for a committee. The vote goes in June, and make the vote so
it's active for
it
July.
goes active July 1st.
Okay. So on the election committee this year, John Cavaney, you were going to be heading that up, and Commissioner Trahan, you're going to be supporting him on that. Does that sound good?
Fine, yeah.
Perfect. With no other questions, go ahead.
Just one other recommendation, the chairman always has kind of pulled who he wants on the committee to make sure that they aren't running for position.
Yes, I believe you guys are.
That somebody.
I feel like you never want it, right? You never want an officer chair.
You never know.
And I don't think you wanted to either, right?
But everybody can change their mind.
Right.
I'll accept the assignment to that.
If you change your mind, you can call up Commissioner Stoll and give him your spot. Okay, thank you. So yeah, those guys will be reaching out to everybody to see who wants to run for what and whatnot, and we will do that in June. So thank you for that. Did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, my committee, we're going to bring up about the bios next month.
Okay.
At the
main
meeting.
Yep, there'll be time to do that for sure.
Okay.
Seacoast report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
On the Advisory Committee of Marine Fisheries, there was a public hearing held on April 6th in Portsmouth to obtain public comments regarding the agreement reached with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission for the newly enacted definition of how to measure a striped bass. From all I'm hearing right now, the only comments were people would like to see a pictorial of how that's actually done, and maybe next year for the saltwater digest, that's something we can do in that regard. I'm still trying to figure out how you take a flapping fish, hold him steady, and fold his tail without having 2 or 3 people involved. And this past Saturday, New Hampshire Fish and Game held their 32nd annual coastal derelict fishing gear cleanup. We had about 110 volunteers show up, which was the most, I think, over in the past 5 years that I'm aware of. And it was open mostly for the people in the lobstering industry and the general public. We actually combed the coast from the Massachusetts state line all the way up through Portsmouth. And it's not easy work, let me tell you. Especially around Hampton Boar's Head. It's about a quarter mile out. It's all rocky terrain. The majority of fishing gear in that area washes up on that point, and it's all rocky. You got to carry 50, 60-pound bundles of rope or traps over all that rocky terrain. There's only one access point It involves climbing up 2 flights of stairs. And I want to thank Sergeant Jeremy Hawks. He helped out quite a bit in that effort in Boar's Head. But it's not an easy task, and for everybody that gets involved, congratulations to all them. So that's it for my report.
Great. Commissioner reports. One mention I did have before we go into that, I forgot to mention it earlier. Next month, we will be holding our meeting in Guilford, New Hampshire at your lovely facility. Do you want to tell us anything about your lovely establishment?
Gunstock Mountain Resort was established as a WPA project in the 30s when Roosevelt was trying to generate jobs in the Depression. So that building that we'll be in was built that year. It's built out of stone from a quarry there, and the trees that were cut down for the initial ski jumps and ski trail were used to build the building. So this past winter, we hosted about 250,000 skier visits, and we host about 2,000 or 3,000 school kids every week that learn how to ski and snowboard. So I hope you would enjoy the facility. It's at 719 Cherry Valley Road in Guilford. If you put Gunstock Mountain in, you will not get there. You will end up on the other side of Guilford, somewhere on the other side of the mountain. So 719 Cherry Valley Road, and we look forward to hosting the event.
Will the pond be stocked that day so that when we get there early?
I'll let Diane answer that.
Send me a text or an email thing.
We don't
I
have
think
to
you
fish.
have to be under 4'6" to fish in that pond.
It'd be considered a derby. With no fish.
And to clarify, our June meeting is still at Great Bay. Is that correct? No. It's not? I thought we said.
Usually don't travel back to back.
June meeting is, on the yearly schedule that was put out, is at, over on the Seacoast.
Oh, the Seacoast, is that correct? No?
Well, we discussed.
Great day.
Well, hold.
To Concord. We discussed, since we're moving in May, we discussed bringing that to Concord here.
Okay, let's
So we'll
circle, yeah, we'll revisit that. Thank you. Commissioner reports. Any reports from commissioners? No? Not seeing any?
I've got one.
Go ahead.
Really, I know a whole bunch of us went this weekend, but I just want to congratulate the staff and recognize all the volunteers that contributed so much to the event here this weekend. It was another, I thought, fantastic event. Put the agency and all our partners just in a really perfect light, and so bravo to everybody involved in it.
Absolutely, it was wonderful. Any other commissioner reports? Director, it's your moment.
Well, I'm going to repeat a little bit of what our fellow commissioner said. As Commissioner Titone mentioned, that we had the derelict fishing gear cleanup. It was a good event, as he mentioned. I guess I want to just say a couple of points about it. I want to thank the commissioners for attending. Appreciated your strong participation. Sorry we got you stuck on that that point where you're having to haul 50-pound gear, but really appreciated your presence there. And my understanding is that Councilor Stevens showed up as well. She did not. Okay, she was not there, but she guessed she heard all about it. Anyway, because she was talking to me about it, so I assumed she was there. Okay, well, anyway, nonetheless, we really appreciated the participation. I want to say a shout out to the Marine Division. Excellent job again. They've done this over and over again. We've been waiting on the weight that has been removed, the weight of the do we have a weight? Are we saying, oh no, okay. I see a yes, shaking. I'm like, oh, we have the weight. So we're still waiting how much gear has been removed. Once we get the weight, we'll announce that.
Probably a couple of dumpsters load.
Yeah, it sounded like it was quite a lot this time, huh?
Yeah, I'd say it was pretty consistent with last year as far as the weight, but Jim is correct. We had record participation with 110 volunteers this year from predominantly the lobster fishing community, so it's a great event.
Yeah, I mean, when we have 100 participants, that's incredible. So shout out to all those guys, and we'll stand ready to hear the weight of the removal. So the good thing was you didn't have to do it in the snow and blizzard like you did last year. Right? So as Commissioner Hodgson said, we hosted another successful Discover Wild New Hampshire Day this past Saturday. welcomed nearly 6,000 attendees with 60 booths, food trucks, demonstrations, programs. It was just one of the most engaging events that we have each year. Special shout out and thanks to the Wildlife Heritage Foundation for sponsoring the event, and to all the commissioners who came. We had a strong showing from you all. We greatly appreciated that. We were also pleased to be joined by Executive Councilor Leo Hill, Executive Councilor Kenny, Representative Harvey, thank you ma'am, also Representative Cole, Representative Labrie, and Honorable Wolf. They were all here in attendance for the day, so it was a really well-received day.
Director, Representative Jacobs was here too. You might
Oh,
have seen
I
her.
did not see him. Well, let me make sure to shout out to him, Representative Jacobs as well. I tried to bring everybody around to see me, but that was hard. So, Representative Jacobs, thank you for joining us. Yeah, so I do want to take a minute though to extend a sincere gratitude not just to all the Fish and Game staff, but all the volunteers and all the vendors who attended. It definitely was making this event, I would say, pretty much spectacular. We started out with a rough morning and weather, but in the end it came out pretty sunny and we had a nice day. I want to give special recognition to Mark Bouchain for his exceptional leadership and management of the entire event. It's no small task and he has mastered it, so shout out to him. And then as far as updates, okay, here we go. You ready? Buckle your seatbelts. All right, the Inland Fisheries Division. The Fisheries Division continues preparations for the upcoming field seasons. They're planning for the 2026 stream surveys, meeting with Winnicott River Fish Passage Project, participating in the State Lands Management Team, and attending the New Hampshire Stream Crossing Initiative quarterly meetings. Region 1 focused heavily on gear preparation. They're doing a lot of seasonal hiring, long-term monitoring, data analysis, and have been handling numerous constituent inquiries. They've also been working with the Eastern Brook Trout Mapping Project and are looking into research into pack raft options for remote pond surveys. Region 2 participated in meetings with the spiny water flea mitigation and trout stocking. They've been preparing for fin clipping, 45,000 salmon yearlings, wow. Managed remote pond survey work, stocking logistics, I should say, I'm sorry, not survey, stocking logistics. They've also supported the UNH eDNA research. They processed trophy fish entries, assisted anglers with a wide variety of inquiries, and conducted the early season salmon opener observations. Region 3 has organized dam site visits, responded to fish data requests, assisted the large vehicle replacement bidding project that we have under the VW grant, and have helped clear debris from Bellamy Park Dam to support the river herring migration. Region 4 completed federal aid report revisions and did a lot with the monitoring of the ice out and the smelt stream conditions. I do want to remind everybody, if you want an update on the fish hatchery at New Hampton, please go online, check out the site, because it has live action photos, near live action photos anyway. You can see it actually looks like, it's starting to look like an actual hatchery now. It's kind of exciting. The Wildlife Division, non-game and endangered wildlife program, the biologists have begun annual piping plover work and least term recovery work at Hampton and Seabrook beaches, installing temporary signs, roping, alerting beachgoers to the nesting areas. They've also continued coordinating with state, town, and private partners on the cooperative beach management efforts for the plover and their recreational use. The game program has hired 2 seasonal bear techs who serve as our, quote, first responders for residents needing help with bear-related conflicts. Nearly 70% of these conflicts stem from backyard food attractants such as garbage and food eaters, chickens as well. With spring underway, the wildlife are becoming much more active, and just encourage everybody, please drive carefully, remove your bird feeders, and do what you can to secure the attractants so that we don't have nuisance situations with wildlife. Game program staff, also in coordination with the Public Affairs Division, has completed the 2025 Harvest Survey, Wildlife Harvest Summary, which provides harvest data and management for updates for deer, moose, bear, turkeys, and fur bearers. The summary is available online and in print at our headquarters and our regional offices, and we also share it at any events that we have. A companion small game summary will be completed probably midsummer. The Habitat program completed, or working on and completed 7 forest management projects on wildlife management areas this year, generating nearly $300,000 while improving habitat and sustainable harvest levels. Good job, Jim. A draft management plan was developed for the 820-acre Glover Farm Wildlife Management Area. That's in Dummer, outlining wildlife habitat and stewardship goals. Plans continue for road repairs on the 25,000-acre Connecticut Lakes Natural Area, addressing the damage from 2024. Basically, we're picking up from where we left off last year. The Marine Division, the Marine Program itself, staff conducted at-sea recreational fishing surveys about deep sea fishing boats. These standardized Atlantic coast-wide surveys begin in April aboard, and they continue through May on shoreside. Staff have been coordinating with other state agencies and municipalities around fish passage and dam operations and removals. They began a process opening the department-owned and operated fish ladders, which allow for the anadromous fish passage in the coastal rivers. Staff have also attended the Coastal Conservation Association Fly Fishing Film Festival to provide outreach on striped bass and citizen science initiatives. And then they also participated in a variety of technical and management groups for the Atlantic State Marine Fisheries Commission and the Atlantic Coast Cooperative Statistics Program on topics including Atlantic herring control efforts and American Lobster and Operations Committee needs. Givner, the Great Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. Staff have been preparing a 2-year grant application for NOAA for our education, research, stewardship, and training and engagement programs, and conducting interviews for an open stewardship coordinator position that we have. From the education public visitation side, Horseshoe Crab Outreach Program occurred at Dondero Elementary in Portsmouth for about 35 students. Aside from Saturday's great outreach program. Volunteer involvement, here's a really big one. 4 volunteers helped with maintaining the facilities and projects at the site. 25 volunteers have participated in half-day trainings for the exhibit room. 10 volunteers helped with the spring prep outdoor work day that they hosted. There's a whole list of volunteers here. They're super engaged in volunteers. They had UNH Marine docents. The class of 25-26 visited to learn about volunteer opportunities, and they had 31 volunteers participating in all-day education training to lead school field trips. On the research and land stewardship, Givner staff worked with Non-Game Program and Eversource to relocate an osprey pole onto the Glen Cove WMA. A previously occupied nest was in the flight path of Pease Air Base, so we worked to quickly relocate that pole ahead of the osprey returning to spring nesting. You guys might have seen that on Facebook. If you haven't, check it out. It's pretty cool. Givner also presented their Bay View lecture series, and it's what's happening with our salt marshes. They explain why salt marshes matter, how we're studying them, and how we're working to protect the salt marshes. There were about 40 people in attendance, including some of our regular volunteers and some new faces. They also participated in the Atlantic Coast Joint Venture meetings to discuss salt marsh sparrow and black duck regional scale recommendations for restoration and protection. And they also attended and presented at the Salt Marsh Conference at UMass Amherst Newton campus around the regional collaboration and analyzing trends to help inform management for salt marshes. Training and engagement. They've been busy. On March 30th, they hosted a 4-hour meeting at Great Bay's 2030s Engagement and Stewardship Workshop, which is 30 people from 18 different coastal organizations, and provided ideas for projects and received funding through the Great Bay 2030 Initiative. On March 31st, they hosted a meeting in a neighborhood in Exeter as part of the Flood Ready Neighborhoods program. On April 1st, they led a small group discussion with participants in the Leadership Seacoast program. On April 9th, they hosted a book club gathering for local water champions interested in reading Is a River Alive? And on April 9th, they also presented in DES's webinar series, Making Waves, and provided an introduction to Caring for Our Marshes guide. The Public Affairs Unit, staff have finished the sale of the 2026 calendars to raise funds for the agency. They sold 5,827 calendars. Total profits of that, $23,291. Staff have also had a table at the Trinity Baptist Church Sportsman's Expo in Concord on Saturday, the April 11th. That was the 20th year for that event. From the director's office, our legal and legislative liaison, who you just all commended, she's continuing to work on rule revisions, she's monitoring legislation that impacts the agency, and she's continuing to provide testimony at legislative hearings and work with senators on providing requested information as requested upon her. She did receive one right-to-know request. It's been relatively slow, knock on wood, thank God for that. Environmental review, we have our environmental coordinator, Mike Guyon, who you met, some of you met at the open house. He's been attending public meetings in Alton and New Durham with DES Dam Bureau to discuss the impoundment drawdowns at the New Hampshire Fish and Game owned Alton Power Dam and Jones Dam respectively. And he's also participated in the early stages of planning for the proposed 28-29 dredge of the navigation channel in Hampton Harbor. And partners there are U.S. Corps of Engineers, DES, New Hampshire Port Authority, DNCR, New Hampshire DOT, and the towns of Hampton and Seabrook. That may be something of value for you, Commissioner Titone. Federal coordinator, the federal aid coordinator, federal aid administrator is preparing grant applications for the June 2026 renewals. It's important to note that the federal submission deadlines have been shortened by a month, so it's really truncated and the time frame and increased the workload right now for this team. So it's a busy time for them, but they're meeting the deadlines and they're getting things done. Federal aid specialist is evaluating annual final report due dates for active grants and sending notifications and emails to the program managers. And the team as a whole has completed the reconciliation of the federal and state funds for land acquisition grant and met with the land acquisition team to discuss the grant status and the future projects. From the director's desk, the week of April 7th, we attended the Northeast Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Conference in West Virginia for 3 days. During the conference, I served on the student panel forum, and I met with the Northeastern states directors. We discussed several multi-state grants. We discussed conservation collaboration initiative projects, and we also received updates from all the technical committees. We were also briefed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on their priorities that were provided. They had asked all the state directors to provide a list of priorities that they wanted to work on with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service then went through and Director Nesvik actually basically targeted some key elements, and those elements were then shared back to us. So it was a good interaction between the states and the feds to actually feel like our voices are heard on what our needs are at the federal level. The other thing is that the Northeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife State Directors drafted a large carnivore resolution that has been posted on the Neapel site. I will share that all with you guys because I think it's important for you to recognize. It basically outlines that the states need to be heavily involved in any attempts to reintroduce or release large carnivores in the northeastern regions. I also participate in several other additional sessions that they have there. I've been working with several commissioners and directors of agencies on cross-agency issues and concerns, including access, dams, properties, and conservation issues, DOT, DNCR, and DES. I think we are probably all best friends now. We've spent a lot more time in the last 2 weeks than we have in the last 6 months together. I've met with representatives from the Bear Hunters Alliance, the Audubon Society, and the Northern New England Outfitters Association. I also participated in the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, the National Association for the Government Affairs team meeting. And then Colonel Jordan and several of his conservation officers and I had conducted nearly an entire day of license suspension hearings. That's what I have as my report. Thank you very much.
Busy. Go ahead, Commissioner Green.
I actually have 2 questions for the director on that report.
Yes, sir.
You were going so fast.
I'm sorry.
Who are the volunteers out at the Great Bend?
Yeah, it's a variety, and maybe Renee could speak to that, because they have different groups that they work with. But come on up, Renee, if you don't mind.
Was it a lot of them?
There's a lot of them.
All right, could I just ask them to be emailed to me?
Oh, sure, yeah. Sure.
My other question is, you were going down about with DES and everybody else, where do we stand on the Lorden property?
That is in DES's hands. As far as I know, they have communicated with Ms. Lorden, and they're setting a date for finalization. I don't know. That's their project. It's their contract. It's
So
their.
we have nothing to do with that anymore,
Not at this
correct?
point. We have signed off, and we're ready to. Our end is complete.
But
for
she
fishing.
keeps calling.
Yeah, Fish and Game's end is complete. I can let. Do you want me to have Commissioner Scott contact her?
No, I'll take care of it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're complete on that.
Any other questions for the director in their report? Call to the public. Representative Harvey.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Representative Catherine Harvey, I'm the ranking member on Fish and Game. I represent Cheshire 6, which is Chesterfield, Spofford, and Hinsdale. I firmly support your proposed fee raises. I think that especially the Hike Safe card, it was $25 forever for me and my husband to hike, and had we gotten into trouble, that would be the best $25 we ever spent. So I firmly support that, and I know my husband will still take out a fishing license even if he has to spend $2 more. So I think that's a good idea. I do think you and I need to talk about possible legislation for next year over the summer, and so I'm offering my services there. If you go to the new fishery, I'm wondering if it might be a public meeting, because I would really like to go and see it as well. I've kind of been here for all of the presentations, so I feel like it's my fishery too. So that would be nice if it's all possible. And the other thing I'd like to have, if I could, is the information, if legislation is to be presented next year, it might be nice to have that, if I could have that sheet that has how much the general fund has given to Fish and Game over the past few years. The more information I have, the easier it is to support something. So if that's, I suppose it's public information, so if you could include me on that, that would be great to have. And the final thing, I do want to congratulate you all on Saturday for the Discover Wild. I had never been to it, and it was an absolutely great day. I even got my husband to come with me, and we had a great time. Could not find any place that sold candied apples, but other than that, it was a great day. The thing that really stuck out in my mind was, and I'm just going to tell you a little story. My husband bought some flies. He's a fisherman, and most of those flies were woolly buggers. And the lady next to him said, "How big of a fish can you catch with those flies?" And the person who had the booth, and I don't know who it was now, very nicely explained that you could catch a fish this big, or you could catch a little brook trout that's only this big. And to me, that was the essence of the day. It was education. Every booth that I went to, they were able to explain whether it was about bees or tracking animals after they've been wounded, or rodenticides. Every booth provided education to the public, and that's what we need to do more of, so that they understand more about the Fish and Game Department, that it's not all about hunting and fishing and trapping. We are out there to preserve New Hampshire outdoors for not only us, but for my grandchildren as well, and we do that through education. So thank you so much for that day. It was a good day, and I'll be back for that next year then.
Thank you. Any other calls from the public? Steve?
Steve Andrews Conway. I just had a couple of questions and then a comment. My first question was, at last month's meeting, there was a talk about raising the habitat fees, and I'm just using this as an example, but if the fisheries habitat fee is $1, which raises approximately $200,000, and that fee goes to $5, which was kind of the high end that was talked about, that's $1 million. Does that mean $100,000 of habitat fees going to admin? Based on the 10%?
It is the 10%, yes.
Okay.
And has been traditionally the way we
Okay.
have done it.
Okay. My other question was, I had some inquiries from customers about, one of our great properties is the Little Greeno tract up north, and AJ knows exactly where I'm going with this.
I did, and I actually apologize for not reaching out to you, but the gate is not going up this year.
This year.
Correct. There is discussion, it's allowing discussions for all the concerns that folks like you have, obviously Fish and Game has, given that our property is in there. So right now, off the table, it's going to come up again. Hopefully there'll be more room for discussion for us to try to mitigate some of that. So.
Yeah, because that would be a real shame that having bought that with habitat funds and then access be blocked for the start of trout season, that would kind of be not good.
So, to be clear, access is not blocked, it's the type of access, right? That you could still access the road, you could still hike the road, you just can't drive on it if the gate were installed. As Commissioner DeRosa, the chairman, said, this year the gate is not going in. DNCR is sort of the lead on this because they they funded the gate for the parcel, but they are going to be speaking with all the landowners and managers in that area, including our leasees, to have a discussion about this further.
Yeah, because just again, my personal observation, because I'm into Little Greeno Pond right after the season opens, and that road has never been muddy, has never been mucked up, except for a small section between Big Brook Pond and Long Pond, where you get the puddle bumps. That road, the logging companies have kept that road in excellent shape, and I have never, ever, ever had an issue getting in there, the last week of April, the first week of May, so.
Part of the issue is that the logging companies are no longer going to be maintaining that road because they have no active logging operations in there, hence why the burden's now being passed on to the state and these conversations are happening. Because yes, as somebody who has a camp in that area, it has
Right.
always, it's been very nice, and that's because they logged like Squeeze Hole Brook and stuff like that, so they were in there doing, maintaining that road for us to be able to.
Okay. Thank you for that. And my last comment is for Commissioner Stoll. Yes, I will be going on social media and informing anglers of what's coming up with the regulations. However, you have my word that I will not provide them with any of your phone numbers or email addresses so that people can contact you directly. They can figure that out for themselves this round. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, Steve, as you do that, please be certain to say that this is not a rule that's moving forward. This is an information session, proposed ideas. We're reaching out, wanting to have people provide their feedback.
Totally understood.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate your help there.
Thank you, Steve. If you could just
one
give.
comment to Steve.
Go
about
ahead.
that. Don't say contact the commissioner, please.
That's
He
what I
just
said.
said that.
I want to make sure.
I will not.
I'm still
I
in
will not
shock.
put that firestorm on you again.
I'm still in shock.
If I could just get your name and where you're from when you start.
Everybody understands how involved the community is on investing.
You're good.
Sean Graves, Spofford, New Hampshire. I've got a few things here to try to talk about. First, thank you guys for your volunteering, your service as commissioners. We appreciate the service that you give for the state of New Hampshire. And I did want to apologize for disparaging the Hillsborough fishermen the last time I was here.
Fishing comment?
Yes, sir. Although the fishing is really good, I'm not going to lie.
I was talking about trout.
I've got some phenomenal pictures. I took some high school kids fishing last week, and we absolutely crushed them. Money for habitat fees, still in big favor of that. Again, the gentleman brought up the amount of money that we would be able to get. One thing I would want to make sure that if we do that, that money is going for habitat and access, not just willy-nilly someplace else. And also that we don't need to just improve ramps that are Fish and Game owned. There's a million different ramps around the state that could use improvement. And I don't know what the red tape is to go through the towns or the Army Corps of Engineer, but if we're improving access, it doesn't have to be just the access that we have. Because most of the access that Fish and Game owns is really good access already. So if we're going to improve access, it would be phenomenal if we could reach out to some of these other areas and improve some of these other ramps as well. I do have some handouts. I don't know if that's allowed or not.
We will allow that, yeah.
Okay. And this is just one of my own pet peeves. I'll let it get all the way around before I start talking about it. This is a social media thing that it's kind of a very popular thing that people do. And it does violate New Hampshire Fish and Game laws. I've blacked out all the names.
Yep. While this is going around, I just want to say, Sean, the funds that we would raise through the Habitat fee would be dedicated strictly to those funds, to those programs.
Right.
Habitat programs only, wildlife habitat, fisheries habitat.
Not access?
No, it's access, but
Okay.
it's what those habitat, those programs do. Like
Yep.
access and
Yep.
all of that.
Well, you know, I'm just,
Yeah, I just want you to understand.
Yep, yep.
Those funds would definitely go to those things.
all right, so the picture on the front is a gentleman holding two fish. Okay, and then there's comments on the back of it. Currently, as far as I understand New Hampshire Fish and Game laws, it is illegal to have live fish in your possession. It's very popular among some anglers to go ahead and put the fish in the live well so that they can get a picture with two fish instead of just one fish. And then this angler admits his understanding of the law in the comments on the back side. And understanding that the Facebook police have issues with, you know, it's illegal. And so I think it would be awesome if we were able to do some type of social media post reminding our anglers that this is not appropriate, it's against Fish and Game laws, and just let them know that perhaps COs would be on the lookout for this type of thing in the future. All right, hold on, what's next here? Speaking of COs, I spend somewhere about 125 days a year on the water, and my neighbor John Caveney can attest that the boat is never in my yard.
Never mowing his lawn, it's quiet.
And in my entire life, I've been only checked 3 times for my fishing license or otherwise. Once was because they were out checking dun hunters, and the other was the first day of trout season. So that leaves me 1 time. I would love to see more of a presence of the COs out and about checking licenses. I mean, I know that they're riding their 4-wheelers and they're doing a good job with the hunting stuff. I'd like to see them do a better job with the fishing stuff. And I understand that they can pull into a ramp and run plates and check on that stuff, but there's nothing compared to the presence of that person there checking licenses. Improving habitat and access. And this is gonna sound really horrible, but I'm tired of hearing about trout. That's a very small part of our overall state fisheries. Our warm water fisheries encompass a much larger section of the state than our cold water fisheries do. We do not, and I think it's because we're not the squeaky wheel that the trout fishermen are. But realistically, our stocking program is nothing more, except for a few areas, a put and take operation. Where we put those fish in, they are taken out, which is great. I buy a license, I take trout out just like anybody else. But our warm water fisheries, those reproduce every single year. And it would be awesome if we could focus a little bit more about our warm water fisheries, especially considering that, and I don't have any actual statistics, except for that our state puts on currently, we have 276 bass tournaments on our books right now. Out of that, there's 330 resident tournaments and 146 out-of-state tournaments. those fishermen bring a tremendous amount of money into our state. And I don't know how many trout fishermen travel to New Hampshire to go fishing, or if it's just more of an in-state piece there. But that's something I think we need to take a look at about the economic impact that warm water fisheries has on the state of New Hampshire. We talked about those firestorms earlier. It was a firestorm with the trout fishing, and I totally understand why those guys were so upset. All of a sudden, they get in all these rules dumped on them. We had the same thing as bass fishermen last fall with the tournament regulations that were brought out at the last moment. Unfortunately, Fish and Game, I think from prior experience with the trout fishing fiasco, as I like to call it, saw that we needed to, instead of bringing forward those rules, they pulled them back. Otherwise, I believe this room would have been just as filled as it was during the trout fishing fiasco. To manage that, I think much like the hunting side of Fish and Game, they have regional meetings. It would be great if we could have regional fisheries meetings around the state. That would help increase communication for things like the trout regulations and stuff like that, as well as the warm water regulations. Matching fish for kids' derbies. I don't understand how that's not a no-brainer to me. These are the kids that are eventually going to be purchasing licenses. I don't know how we go about covering for it, or if we short the ponds and lakes that are out there for current fishermen. We do a youth weekend. It's no different than the trout derbies to me. We should be very proactive in recruiting those young anglers. Especially since as they're getting older, we're competing with everything that's going on in their lives, whether it's tech, whether it's school, whether it's sports. We're competing with all of that stuff. And the earlier we are able to capture them, the more likely they are going to become lifelong fishermen and hunters. Another way that we can raise fees, it is high time to register non-motorized watercraft. Whether it is canoes, kayaks, sailboats, or paddleboards, they're using our facilities. There's no reason why they cannot contribute to the maintenance of those facilities and increasing the access to those facilities. There's a number of other states that are already starting to do creating fees for those non-motorized watercraft. And that's it.
Thank you. And Sean, to let you know, they will be touring with the rule changes. They will be touring for public input.
But just in general, though, we should really have fisheries meetings.
They always do.
We do not have regional fisheries meetings. We do not have regional fisheries meetings. I've been to every hunting meeting.
I guess the question is, what are you defining as regional, you know, like?
Well,
like,
I can go to
guess
Keene
that
High
maybe
School
that's
once a year and go and listen to all the hunting biologists, all of our fishing game, all of our game biologists come down and give their report to everybody. We do not have that for fishing.
Okay, thank you, duly noted. Thanks, Sean. Any other from the public? If you could just give your name and where you're from.
Chad McGee from New Ipswich. I think Sean touched on a lot of the things that I was looking to address. One of the things was just in regard to the ramps, access being an issue, but the other, I always kind of scratched my head how it worked when you pull into a ramp and there's a handicap sign, but there's no dock. Just in the regard, I have an uncle with Parkinson's, I have a niece that has Rett syndrome who's in a wheelchair. It'd be great to be able to get them out in the water. I don't have a hope or a prayer on trying to get them into a boat safely. So just some docks I think would be a huge bonus. Aside from that, just some of the ramps that we have, all of the shores lined with riprap and trying to beach fiberglass boat on rocks. It's every time you do it, you're looking at hundreds to thousands of dollars worth of damage you're doing to the bottom of the boat. And again, just Maine kind of has seemed like the common comparison, but you go to any of the lakes that are up in Maine, there's great access, great parking, all of them have a dock there. It's pretty well thought out, and I just think that a lot of our ramps could use some improvement on that. Then kind of going back to what Sean had mentioned as well with the, just with where the funds are going and who's getting what for funds as far as whether it being going towards trout or bass fishermen. I certainly agree with Sean. I think that bass fishing is a big part of this. And I know other states where I buy licenses, they'll have like a poll when you're buying the license as far as do you intend to hunt for this or so on or so forth. I'd be very interested to know just what the percentages are of anglers as far as who's targeting trout, who's targeting bass, because I think that that would be kind of an eye-opener as far as, well, heck, if we've got 70% or whatever of the population that's mainly targeting bass, to kind of cater towards that a little bit, I guess. Because I mean, from my perspective, we're not really doing a whole lot as far as like making an offshore structure or anything like that, or man-made structure is concerned. I mean, I think stocking the trout's probably the biggest thing that's helping the bass in a lot of these ponds. And then one other idea that I had on this, similar to how it's handled with pheasant hunting and so on, where there's an additional stamp that needs to be purchased for pheasant hunting, if that would be an option for trout. But just to kind of offset that difference that's in there. But and as far as the license fees, even more. Like, and if being a business owner myself, and certainly over the past 10 years or so, everyone's going to complain. It doesn't matter what you do, everyone's going to whine. But at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things, even if you guys wanted to send out an email kind of to shut people up before they start to complain, name one item that you purchased for the same price 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, that you're purchasing for the same price today. It's not there. So just to kind of reel people in and have them look like, all right, look at the rate of inflation we've had over the past few years. Yeah, it's high time that the license fees are going to go up too. Like, and I think one other thing, I don't know if it would even be something feasible for the hatcheries or whatever, but I don't know if you guys are familiar and seeing what's going on down in Texas with what they're doing with bass fishing down there. They've got what's called the Share Lunker program, where basically someone catches a fish over 10 pounds, which obviously that bar is going to need to be set lower up here. But they'll actually go get that fish, bring it in, and have that as a breeder to then go and basically try to propagate those larger size fish genetics. So, but I think that that would be something that would be really cool and be interesting to see what we could do as far as growing some trophy size fish in the state on a more consistent basis. But that was it. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Anybody else from the public? None?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.